In this support video, I am going to run through how to create a KnowledgeSmart survey. Let's go ahead and log into the admin dashboard. And from the main menu options here on the left-hand side, make sure that you click the survey button option. If you go over to the library menu on the left-hand side and published content, we have added two new library survey options for you, which you can of course then work with and customize further. The first one is around remote working and some key questions that you might like to pose to your team. And the second one is around digital transformation, so general questions around the process of digital transformation. So these library options are there just to give you an idea of what is possible, and you can either use them as is or then customize them. The draft content area has a very similar feel to the draft tests menu layout. So if you've worked with assessments before, this should be quite a familiar interface. Notice we have draft modules, draft questions, and draft surveys, similar to the structure that we see on the assessment side. We also have the ability to then create questions from scratch, group those questions into modules, and then finally group those modules into our finalized survey content. If we focus our attention for a moment on the Create Questions submenu area, we'll notice that there are 4 types of questions for us to choose from. There is also a 3,000 character limit on question text. If we choose free comment, for example, and click Continue, we notice that there is also a mandatory question area here. So if this option is ticked, the question is mandatory to answer, or if it's left unticked, it is optional for the person to answer. Once you've structured your survey question name as well as the question text, you can click Continue to go over to the next step. Step 3 of the survey question process is around tagging your question. Now, this is an area that is very important because it is going to help manage your survey content inside your survey library. So add some unique tags here that you might use to then later search for applicable questions. Let's focus our attention on the second type of survey questions that we can create, and that is a yes or no question. So here we will word our question title. Let's call it work enjoyment, and maybe our question text is, do you enjoy working from home? And we make it a mandatory question and we click Continue. You'll notice that there are no further question settings to define here. So the way our yes and no questions work is there is a little radio box, and if the user ticks that box, then that is a yes entry, and if it is left unticked, it would be taken as a no or negative entry. Let's take a look at the third type of question, which is a multiple choice, select one option only. So if we take a look at an example, the question name might be internet browser, the question text might be, which internet browser do you use most frequently? And now we get to define our options. Once our options are defined and perhaps we need to make a change, we can hover over this icon here on the right hand side with a pencil, and that will then allow us to then edit that option. Once we've made our change, we can just click the green tick to save it again. If we want to delete an option altogether, we can click this little icon here, which will then delete that for us. The last question type, which is multiple choice, select many, works similarly to the one that I've just described, but the user is able to select more than one option. Once I've created all my questions, I now need to group them into modules. Now, when grouping questions into modules, it's always a good idea to think ahead about how you would like to analyze the results. So, some people might group all their questions into one module, but then that wouldn't give you too much granularity when analyzing the results. So just think very carefully about, how you'd like to group those questions. So here I can simply select the relevant questions that I want to add into the module I'm creating. I can also search here, maybe software related questions, and I can then go and add those ones that were found for me. Once again, remember to tag your module because that will help you find the module later on. Our next step is then to group our modules into our finalized survey, and we'll give it a name and a quick description. And in the same way that we grouped questions into modules, we are now simply grouping our modules into our finalized survey. So you just select the plus icon here on the right hand side to then add the modules that you want to add. Also make use of the search modules area to narrow down the number of modules display here that you can select from. So here I've just searched for modules related to BIM, and that then shows me all available modules, and I can simply then make my selection to add any additional content. Once I'm happy with the way my modules are structured, I can click continue. And step 3 is then to add a welcome message or perhaps some instructions for the user to follow, as well as some category tags. When you have created your survey, you can capture a unique URL or a unique survey code, which can then be used for inviting users to complete your survey. So if we have a look here, this would be your survey link, and alternatively users can visit this URL here and then enter that unique survey code, which is then shown on this screen. That will also be seen here on the right hand side of the summary area. This concludes the quick summary video on the KnowledgeSmart survey tool. Our next video will go over what we call a hybrid test and survey, so covering how you would link the assessment process with a KnowledgeSmart survey.